Alrighty, we're here with Sidney Collin, which I had to ask before. Collin singular, not Collins.
The one and only.
Shout out Tom Collins, the one and only Sidney Collin, co-founder, president, CTO, former CEO. We'll just call her co-founder of De Oro Devices and NexStride. Really cool thing in the world of improving life and mobility for those with Parkinson's and beyond. Sydney, so excited to chat with you today, and to you, I guess. Thank you so much for doing it. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I am doing well. It's beautiful and sunny here in Austin, Texas. It's been like 85 degrees this week. Snowed last week, so you just never know what you're going to get here in Texas. How are
Austin, man.
you?
I'm great. I'm great. Keep Austin weird. That's what they say, right? I guess it applies to the weather too. But
Everything.
I'm super excited. I think it's always cool when there's an entrepreneur with like a medical or we'll call it like a good vibes a business. And I haven't interviewed too many of them, so this is pretty cool and pretty unique. But before we get into everything with Dioro and NexStride, uh, I know that you are a geek in terms of brain research, we'll call it. There's something about the brain that gets you really excited. Where does that background come from? Like, why is the brain so interesting to you?
Dude, I don't know. Like, I don't know what it is about the brain that has always just drawn me in, but it really has. Um, I got really interested in understanding how the brain and the body work, how they work together, how they can kind of modify each other. Um, I think in high school, I remember I was in a human anatomy and physiology class, and I think the teacher just like didn't feel like teaching that day, and she just put on a bunch of TED Talks, and she was like, "Here, kids, watch this." Um, and there was this podcast, or sorry, there was this TED Talk about this team that was doing brain-controlled prosthetics. And I thought that was just the coolest thing I had ever seen in my entire life. And I had already been pretty fascinated in biology before that. I had a really cool, really funky AP Bio teacher, Miss Haber. Shout out Miss Haber, Berkeley High. She
Real quick, my cousin's names are Habers, so shout out all the Habers.
all the Habers. She's really just a great teacher, but also really funky. Like she would like, I remember when we were learning about a specific type of bird, she would like do the mating call of the bird at the beginning of the class, and we were all like, "What is happening? Like, who is this woman?" But those teachers that are like a little weird, they really like stick with you. Like the information that you learn from them, it sticks in your brain. She definitely was very, she got you hooked. So I was interested in biology before that, but I remember when I was in this human anatomy and physiology class watching these researchers show this brain controlled prosthetic. I was just, I mean, completely fascinated with understanding how does that even work? How do you take these signals that are sent throughout the brain, transmit them to signals that are battery operated, and transmit those signals into something that can move a machine? Like, that is so freaking cool. So that's how I really got fascinated in that subject, and then from there on out, looked for every opportunity to kind of be in that space. So I ended up studying biomedical engineering at Cal Poly because of that, because of my AP Bio teacher, because I loved math and science and building stuff, and I really was fascinated in understanding how the brain works, and it felt like biomedical engineering was like relatively new at the time when I started undergrad. And it felt like that was a way to kind of integrate all the things I liked into one thing. And I was like, that sounds perfect. Um, and then when I was in college, I did a couple of projects in school where I was able to kind of dive deeper into that. So I did some research for St. Jude Medical, Abbott at the time, Abbott now, doing research for deep brain stimulation for people with Parkinson's. And then I actually took some time off of school and did some research in EEG neurofeedback for children with ADHD. Worked for a company in Paris, flew out to France, stayed there for 6 months, worked with them for a little bit, published research in the Journal of Clinical Neurophysiology, and then came back and finished school. So that's a long-winded way of saying I don't know exactly why the brain has been so fascinating to me, but I have done everything in my power to continue to learn about it since then.
And a lot of long words, so just to prove that you're pretty smart. But no, I think the brain is something that I've always been fascinated in as well. It's just like, I mean, the whole body and biology in general, but especially the brain is like so much goes on there. And like when you add different considerations, like you were talking about, like prosthetics, and then how like the brain like adjusts and things like that, it's unbelievable. I guess pursued that interest in the brain much less than you have. I'll say maybe it's up for debate, but what is it like from those early days of getting interested in the brain? We'll call it that era. What's kind of like a fun fact or something just literally mind blowing about the brain that you've always thought was really really cool?
But I mean, that's a hard question to answer because there's so many things about the brain. I mean, I think it's more the understanding that there is this organ in the body that controls everything that we do. There's this famous quote that I really like that kind of I think is a good example of why I'm so fascinated with the brain and why I love to dive into it. It's the same reason I love theoretical physics. It's like so hard to understand. Um, but anyways, the quote is, if the brain were so simple that we could understand it, we'd be so simple that we couldn't. And it's this idea that like we will never fully understand how the brain works because we are using our brain to understand the brain. And so there's this idea that like I don't know why I love that so much, but this idea that like we are never going to be able to fully map this out and understand every single thing about it. It's just not possible. And there's something appealing about that to me. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Same thing with theoretical physics. It's like, okay, there's this thing called quantum mechanics, and like we don't really understand it, but we also kind of understand it. But it goes against everything that we think we know when we're talking about Newtonian physics. And then we get into quantum mechanics, and you're just like, what? This goes against all the laws I've ever been taught in physics. And yet we have all these examples to show that it's true and it's real. And it just feels very like hard to wrap your brain around. And there's something really fun about that to me. I don't know.
So we're gonna table your business journey and just talk theoretical physics the whole time. If that
Yeah,
were,
the
no,
business
just
doesn't
kidding.
really matter that much. That's not the point of this podcast.
Yeah, that's for another time. No, so let's get to your business journey and your creation and everything you're doing there. And so you got De Oro. Am I understanding it correctly that like De Oro is like the company behind it, and then NexStride is kind of like the pillar core product?
That's correct. Yep.
And so, and I know this all ties back to the research kind of that you were alluding to and some of the work you've been doing, but for anybody who's not familiar, unfortunately, I think a lot of us are familiar with Parkinson's, and it seemingly is like increasing and in so many places, and so many are affected by it. But can you just give kind of like a high level breakdown of like what Parkinson's is, if I could talk right, and then how it often can affect your body?
Yeah. So Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disease, which basically means that it's a progressive neurodegenerative disease. So it'll keep getting worse. There's a specific part of your brain called the substantia nigra where cells are dying. That area of the brain is what creates a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And so essentially all the symptoms of Parkinson's come from the lack of dopamine in the brain, which is caused by the dying cells in the substantia nigra. We don't exactly know why those cells start dying, but we know that they do. And then all the other symptoms of Parkinson's come from that lack of dopamine. There's all sorts of symptoms of Parkinson's, from like having trouble swallowing, having trouble kind of talking, having trouble walking. This is the symptom that we kind of focus on as the mobility aspect of things. There's cognitive symptoms. There's depression, apathy. There's really all sorts of ways that it affects your body. You can think of it very high level generally it's these automatic pathways in your body that get affected. So all the things that you do without thinking, like breathe, chew, walk, swallow, like blink, all these things that you do without thinking become very, very difficult for somebody with Parkinson's because their automatic system um, is affected really heavily. And in terms of the size of Parkinson's, there's 10 million people diagnosed with Parkinson's globally, 1 million in the US, but it's actually the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease. So Alzheimer's is the most common, Parkinson's is the second most common, but Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease. So it's very common. I mean, you'll see if you don't know someone with Parkinson's, I guarantee you know someone who knows somebody with Parkinson's. Um, it's it's popping up a lot more.
Yeah, I appreciate that breakdown there. I'm going to have a lot of science questions for you, so apologies for that. But I noted automatic pathways, so that's important. But so that's a great background, like understanding of it. How did you become interested in like, wait a second, there's actually like parts of, this disease that I can actually create something and do something about?
So I started doing research in Parkinson's in deep brain stimulation, which we talked about already while I was in school. Um, and that's how I started kind of understanding the Parkinson space. And then I ended up meeting, so the head of the biomedical engineering department at Cal Poly, Dr. Lily Lyho, introduced me to a local veteran in the community named Jack Brill. And Jack Brill lived with Parkinson's disease, and he suffered from this mobility symptom called freezing of gait that affects his ability to walk. And, I met him and he asked me for help building this product. So he actually knew, right? Like, I know that these visual and auditory cues help me because I use them in my Jack Brill, right? Use them in my physical therapy clinic. And I knew that they worked for me, but then I go home, I'm not able to use them. So he reached out to the biomedical engineering department and said, "Hey, I have this idea. I need an engineer who can help me build it." And I got connected to him that way. And so that was really the motivation, was there was a person that I could help, that I could substantially improve his life by helping him build this product. And so it started as like, a school project. I stayed in SLO in San Luis Obispo over the summer I think this was after my second year of college, and just built this product with him. Was working in the lab every day and was kind of learning. I had taken one intro to coding class. I like got my advisor, Mr. Lyho, Dr. Lyho's husband, um, I remember him like coming into the lab and dropping this book on the table, it's like Intro to Arduino, and he's like, "All right, so you figure it out." I was like reading the first chapter, doing the very basic, like I think it's like blinking LED circuit. Like I don't know if you are familiar with Arduinos, but it's like this is the first thing that everyone does. Like if you send your almost newly born daughter to engineering camp, like this is the first thing she'll do when she's like 10 years old, is like the blinking LED thing. It's very simple. Anyways, I walked through, did that, and then just kind of like figured it out from there. And luckily with Arduino, it's open source, so you can kind of like find code that does like generally what you want and then edit it, and you don't really need to have a great understanding of computer science to be able to do it, thank goodness. And at the end of 3 months I had a prototype for him that I was able to give him, and I could see him walk for the first time, which was a pretty life-changing event to see that. He had been in a wheelchair all the time before that. He could go to his physical therapy clinic and walk using visual auditory cues, but other than that, he was in his wheelchair all the time. Um, and so that was the first time I had seen him walk, and that was a pretty crazy moment to be like, oh wow, this isn't just like this small thing that can slightly improve his life. This is like the difference of him being able to walk or not, and realize that could have a really big impact.
Yeah, that's like, people talk about the like eureka moments that like scientists and like chemists have, and all that, and like that's one of the best I've ever heard, because the amount you're like firsthand changing somebody's life and seeing the impact right there, and then realizing, wait, that we can affect and improve the lives of a lot more people with this as well. So
Well, at
I,
that point,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. At that point, I didn't even know that there was like other people I could help. It was just Jack. Like, whoa, I could
yeah,
really affect Jack's life and Jack's wife Sandy's life, because at this point, because Jack was in a wheelchair, Sandy was doing everything for him. You know, like he needed something in his office, she would go get it, bring it back. Like she needed to like walk with him to the bathroom. Like they couldn't go on walks together. There's, you know, it also affected her life. So at that point, there was no idea of like, oh, I'm going to make this a business. I mean, I was in college, right? I was just after my sophomore year of college. So I wasn't like, oh, this is the start of the big business. I was like, oh, wow, this was a cool project, you know?
so this, I think this interview is just turning into like, explain it to Max as if he's a second grader. So if Max is a second grader, not me, just, you know, some other second grade Max, uh, how does NexStride work? Like how that, like that seems like almost too good to be true. It seems
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like what, can we
No,
connect the
totally.
dots there?
No, 100%. I mean, I remember Jack telling me, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take a laser light. We're gonna take a metronome. He really liked music, so he was less into the metronome and more into the music because he liked to play music from his walker. Turns out the wider market doesn't actually want music playing out of their canes, but that's a different story. Um, so he was like, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna create an MP3 player. We're gonna get a laser light. We're gonna put it on my walker, and then I'm gonna be able to walk. And I was sitting here like, okay, I mean, I will create this because I think it'll be fun, and I would like to work with him, and I want to build something. Like, okay, cool. But I was not convinced that this was really gonna help him. And during the process, I started to look into the research, and I found, okay, there actually are over 100 peer-reviewed articles that have been published showing the efficacy of these visual and auditory cues. Visual and auditory cues being a laser line on the floor and a metronome. And there was also research behind music. Um, and and so it started to build a little bit of credibility in my mind of like, okay, this might be something that is real. But I had never really experienced it until I gave him the unit to try for the first time. Um, and that's when I like really started to understand what was happening and dive into understanding the research. And essentially, what we found is that there is the reason that freezing of gait happens is there's a specific neural pathway in the brain that gets damaged or disconnected. And it makes it so that when your brain is sending that signal to initiate movement, that signal isn't getting to the motor neurons that are activating your muscles. But what we can do is we can use these external visual and auditory cues to activate the goal-oriented part of the brain. And that allows you to bypass the damaged neural circuits that are causing freezing of gait and allow someone to be able to restore mobility. So let me simplify that a little bit. As we mentioned at the beginning, right, a lot of the symptoms of Parkinson's are focused around the automatic movements. If you can do the same movement, but it's a goal-oriented movement instead of an automatic movement, you're able to bypass the damaged part of the brain. So if you, Max, are walking and you're just saying like, oh, okay, I'm going to go walk over there. You're not like, that's the automatic part of your brain. But if if I put a piece of tape on the floor and I say, step over this tape, if I put, if I give you marching music and I say, march to this music, that's a goal. And so that uses a different part of the brain to initiate the same exact movement that you would have done if you were doing the automatic movement. Does that kind of make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No, that was, you just totally, wow. I did not intend to do this, but you literally unlocked that in my brain by describing that. And so, no, that's super helpful. And I mean, it makes me think of a couple other things in the medical world. One is like, is it kind of like a bypass in heart surgery, or like almost if you could go? I mean, I guess if you think
Yeah,
about it
yeah, yeah.
figuratively, going around it, whatever is there, the blockage. And then the other
Totally.
question I had on that is that the way that Parkinson's works as far as affecting gait, like to me, it sounds a lot like multiple sclerosis and something that can happen with MS. Is that at least that part of Parkinson's? Is that similar, or is it like totally different in terms of MS?
You know, MS is also a neurodegenerative disease. So there's a couple of different neurodegenerative diseases that are pretty common. Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, PSP, cerebral palsy are just a few. So they are all neurodegenerative diseases. In terms of what causes the symptoms, I don't know as much in the other areas outside of Parkinson's, so I wouldn't be the person to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, thought it. I'm just proud of myself. I've officially stumped you, not you stumping me. So that's what that question was for. No, it's really, this whole interview is just like light bulb moments and warms my heart hearing about it. You mentioned that, like, at first you didn't realize this could even be a business, or you weren't like thinking about that yet. What were the steps you took to actually like start to like create more than one of these devices and to actually be like, hey, we can turn this into a business that can help more people?
Well, the first thing was Jack brought me to a support group, a Parkinson support group in SLO, to show off the new technology that he had, that we had built together, but that he had on his locker. Um, and that's where I met, well, not only did I meet one of the like leaders in Parkinson's research there, Dr. Becky Farley, she happened to be presenting at that support group, and she was super excited about the technology as well. So that was like a green flag for me. But I also met 30 other people who had Parkinson's and suffered from freezing of gait and had no solution for it. And so I remember, we presented this with Jack. Jack stood up, he showed off his cool technology, walked around, and and then after that support group was over, I remember these people coming up to me one by one saying, hi, my name's Bob, my name's Jill Joe, so and so. I'm making up names. Um,
Jill Joe as one name, I think, could fly. That's pretty cool.
Jill Joe, Billy Bob, whoever it was. And they all came up to me one by one saying like, hi, my name's so and so, how can I get one of these technologies? Like when do I get to walk again? And I remember just thinking like, oh crap, like how am I going to make 20 more of these? Like I don't have the like funding to be able to build 30 more. And so I started looking into, okay, well, is there like a grant? Is there something that I can do to make 30 more of these? And what I found is that at Cal Poly, there were two like business competitions. There was the Innovation Quest IQ, which was, I think it was like the number one prize was like $15,000, $10,000, and $5,000, like first, second, third place. And I was like, okay, cool, that would be enough. And then there was this other opportunity that was the accelerator, where all the people that get into the accelerator get a $10,000 grant. And I was like, okay, great, that would be enough. So I went and pitched Innovation Quest and lost really badly. Like they, the judges came up to me afterwards and they were like, "You've got some learning to do." Like, I was like, "You just came up there and just told us, just literally recited research. Like that's not a business. Like that's just research." It's like I don't understand. I feel like it's the same thing. Um, and then I did the accelerator, and I think that I learned a lot from the Innovation Quest first, and then got into the accelerator, and um, and I think they also just kind of took pity on me. They're like, okay, this poor engineer has no idea what she's getting herself into, but we think that there's an opportunity here. So I ended up doing the accelerator, getting $10,000. At that was enough for us to build a few more of those for the people that needed them. And of course, in that process, it's a 3-month accelerator. So in that process, we're learning about the business opportunity. And that's when we started to realize that there actually is a business opportunity there outside of just Jack, and that we could have a much bigger impact, not only in the Parkinson's population, but this technology is also effective in stroke and cerebral palsy and multiple sclerosis and PSP, and the elderly population in general for people who are high fall risk. So there was a much bigger market opportunity out there.
Not to bring back bad memories, but what is it that you learned from the failed pitch, we'll call it, of IQ?
The funny thing is, they asked me to come back and judge it this year, to judge Innovation Quest. And I'm like, I don't know if you want me to judge it. I lost very badly, but I've learned a lot since then. Why did I lose? What? Oh, what did I learn from it?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the first way of saying that sounds just like I'm a total dick. So thanks.
so why were you so bad at that?
Please elaborate. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's just the classic story of like an engineer trying to start a company, right? Saying like, "Hey, there's this really cool product. Here's the cool product," and not the business opportunity. Like there was very little. I was uninterested in the market, the go-to-market strategy. I was not. I thought it was all just like, well, if you have a great product, then it sells itself, right? This is famous last words. um, and yeah, and then I went up there and was like, quoting all of the research, talking about how effective the product is, and they were like, "How are you going to sell this?" I'm like, "What do you mean, how am I going to sell it? Like, did you not see all this research of how effective it is?" And they're like, "Yeah, but who's going to buy it?" And I'm like, "People, I don't know." Apparently, that's not what they wanted to hear.
People, that's always a good answer. Um, Unless it's like an animal product, then I guess not. But so as it started to, like, you were in the accelerator, and congrats on winning that, all good things. And so it seems like that was like really formative for the business. What would you say, looking back now, has been like the biggest changes or decisions that you've made with the business that have like gotten the momentum going with it?
Well, I think there's a lot of inflection points. I think all of the accelerators and communities that we've joined have been kind of opened up doors for us. And every accelerator that we did had a very specific purpose, right? So this accelerator out of Cal Poly was really getting exposed to the business world. We joined Startup Health that unlocked doors in the medical technology space, and understanding, right, connections to people who understand the space, FDA regulation, reimbursement, that sort of space. Capital Factory here in Texas is we joined when we moved out to Texas, when I moved out to Texas. Um, and that allowed us to kind of get connected into that space. Um, so I would say those are kind of like minor inflection points. The big one that comes to mind is the transition from our business strategy from being primarily direct to consumer to being primarily B2B, which I think is pretty common for startups to move from a direct to consumer to a B2B space. But I think that was made a big difference for us.
Yeah, that's huge. Can you share like what you've learned about pivoting to the B2B world?
Yeah, I mean, generally, right, when you look at the LTV to CAC ratio, right, long-term lifetime value of a customer versus the customer acquisition cost, um, B2B sometimes makes more sense than direct to consumer. Often makes more sense when you're in the space that we're in the medical space. I think the customer acquisition cost for us, like there's a lot, people aren't familiar with visual auditory cues. There's a lot of education required to get somebody to understand the value of our product. If I go up to someone and say, "Hey, I have a laser and a metronome, it's going to help you walk," they're like, okay, how exactly does that work? There's a lot of education that's needed to get somebody to understand and get someone comfortable with that. Not only do we have to educate them on what the product is, how it works, but also we need people to be able to self-identify into the group of like, "Hey, I'm a good fit for this product. I am the potential customer here." So that ends up being a lot of time and sometimes is expensive. And so the lifetime value versus customer acquisition cost for that one customer, the ratio isn't quite where we want it to be. But if we go on the B2B side of things, one customer, like we work with long-term care insurance companies. We just closed this big deal with Prudential, which I can talk about because they published it already. Um, they, so we have this one customer. They have hundreds of thousands of people that they work with. So yes, we have to educate that customer, and it might take a little bit longer, but then the lifetime value of that customer is a lot higher for us. So the CAC to LTV ratio just makes a lot more sense.
I think you said the cocktail ratio. I'm like that's kind of more out of the business stuff, but that applies
CAC,
to.
the
Yeah,
customer
yeah,
acquisition
exactly.
cost to lifetime value
Yeah.
of the customer.
what would you say has been like the biggest challenge in terms of building this business so far?
It's hard. There's so many challenges. How do I find one biggest challenge? Again, there's like so many things I could say here, but I think in general, trying to find something that'll be more applicable to more people than like specifically my company. Um, I think it's really like you have to be comfortable with uncertainty and you have to be comfortable with rejection. And I think that's very hard. It's like easy to say and a lot harder to do. Like anybody who's gone through a fundraising round needs to be comfortable with people, making you feel stupid, and people being like, this is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of. And, and you just need to be able to like take what's valuable out of it, leave what's not, and go do it again. And that's hard. It's hard to do. It's easy to say, but it's hard to do.
Well, that was so stupid. No, I'm just kidding. That's a wonderful lesson. All right, so I've grilled you enough for now about challenges and inflection points. Let's switch it up a bit. The last couple segments are more dive more into your personality, and you. It doesn't have to be tied to the business at all. You're certainly welcome to if you want. But first segment is called the unusual. So pet peeves, quirks, weird talents. Let's start with quirks. What's something just a little quirky about your personality that like friends, family, team, somebody calls you out for, but it's who you are?
Um, I'm pretty bad about interrupting people. I think that's my friends call me out for that. Oh my God, it used to drive my boyfriend insane.
You
Like he
mean
would
wait, I'm interrupting you now. Sorry. You mean like you are the interrupter?
like I yes, like I'm I'm the interrupter. So like you'll say something that I'm like really excited about. I'll be like, yeah, totally. And they're like, I wasn't done. And I'm like, oh sorry. And so I will have to like literally like put my hand over my mouth when someone's talking and just be like, or like write down what I was gonna say because I'll completely forget later what I was so excited about. But yeah, that's something that it used to drive my boyfriend insane. He would get legitimately mad at me. Other people are just kind of like, oh, this is just like a weird thing Sydney does. I'm not offended by it, but my boyfriend would get legitimately upset. So I had to work on that.
Well, I would never guess that based on this interview. I think you've been a very non-interruptive, for the most part. For the most, no. But there is like a wide range I've noticed with that in terms of whether it like ticks people off being interrupted and whether it's totally fine. Yeah, that's really we could do a whole deep dive into that. So, all right. And also, I can't believe I interrupted you as you were describing that. So sorry.
That's all right.
All right. How about pet peeves? Speaking of, what is something that just kind of grinds your gears a little bit?
I mean, I think in general, just stagnation, like being in one spot and not being able to grow or change or learn or whatever. Um, just, I think that it really drives me crazy. Um, but I really like need novelty in my life. I think that might be why I'm a startup founder. But that's something that I just has always bothered me, just like feeling stagnant.
And what it, yeah, I think that's a great trait for a founder, as you alluded to. And then weird talents. What is something that you're really good at, but like could literally be like a tiny, minuscule thing, but you just have a knack for it?
Have you ever played the game Set?
I don't think so. What kind of game is that?
It's like a pattern matching game. I used to play this with my family when we were kids, and I have always been very strangely good at it. And I tried to play with my boyfriend. He like legitimately won't play with me because he gets so upset because I will. He just can't keep up.
Is that a board game or card game?
No, it's a card game, but it's like specific types of cards. I think I have ADD. I think it's like really good for people with ADD because it moves really fast. I think that's also the thing. Like I really like things that move fast. I like same thing with like have you ever played flapjack or Egyptian war where you see a pattern and you slap it
Is that
immediately.
yeah? Egyptian rat screw? Is that still is
Yeah.
that the same thing? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Same thing. Love that game. I love like things that move fast like that. Things that are very like I don't know.
All right. Well, you're gonna hate this. We're gonna wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A super fast. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
All right. And I say hate this because I am very slow at asking these. So let's get wild. What is the memory from living in? Oh, now I have to say it, Paris. I just suck at French accents. In Paris, that what's a memory that like makes you the most nostalgic?
Oh, I just loved it there. I want to move back to Paris at some point. I'm not being very rapid fire about the answer either.
Hey, I'll
I'm
just
just gonna
interrupt you in a
say
minute anyway. Oh, there we go.
I'm just gonna say the chocolate croissants. That's my favorite thing about Paris.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, those are they look good, and then they're somehow so much better than they look. Even like it's the next level. All right, I heard a little birdie told me. Speaking of bird mating calls, a little birdie told me that you at one point in your life thought you would become like a professional dancer. What is it? What's like your favorite memory or the best part of doing ballet growing up?
Well, the one thing that I really liked about it is that it was very structured. Like I danced at the San Francisco Ballet School, and it's like very traditional, very structured, very like intense. And I really liked that, strangely, even though I'm like not a very structured person at all. But there's something about it that I really liked growing up. But I think in general, dance is just it's a very I don't think of myself as a very creative person in general. Like I'm not someone who just gonna like sit down and draw. One of my best friends, Sarah, she'll just sit down with a blank canvas and then an hour later there's like this beautiful thing on it and I'm like, how did you do that? Not something that I can do. I can like copy something else and recreate it, but like just coming up with it out of nowhere is just not something that I'm capable of. Um, but I think that dance can be very creative. I like that it connects you with your body. Like you're really in tune with like how everything is moving and how you feel. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, but yeah. The funny thing is, when I stopped dancing with the San Francisco Ballet School. I haven't taken a dance class yet. Since then, it's been like I don't know, 10, 11 years. So
You're due
it's
for
quite
it.
cold turkey.
Yeah. Well, you're due for it for ballet and then a night of playing a set in Egyptian, whatever it's called now too. All right, and
Yeah.
then what was the first moment, the first thing like when you moved to Austin that you were like, okay, this is why seemingly everyone in the world is moving to Austin.
Well, they have really good tacos. I'm a big taco fan. That's another weird thing
Yeah,
about me. Like 90% of my diet is tacos.
that's not
Um,
weird. No, those are delicious. Wait. What's your top
so
taco place then in Austin?
there's a place up the street called Las Trancas. It's like just like a food truck. It's so good. Veracruz also. Veracruz is good. Um, where else do we go? I mean, those are the top two, I think.
I'm totally blanking on the name, but we did my bachelor party in Austin. Okay, like everybody in the world, and one of the best bites of food we had was just like the food truck taco place that we went to just like the Friday at lunch when we got in, and it was just so good. Like they're just so fresh, there's nothing like it. And I don't know, I would shout them out, but I totally forgot the name, but maybe it's one of the ones you mentioned, so I'll have to look it up afterwards.
Granny's Tacos is another good one. That's my boyfriend's favorite.
That sounds good. I would, yeah, tacos, tacos and tapas tour. No, tacos tour is all for Austin. All right, and then
Oh
last
yeah,
one. You mentioned so your AP Bio teacher, Haber.
Miss Haver.
Yes, Miss Haber.
I hope she listens to this. I brought her flowers when I was in college and told her she was the reason I studied biomedical engineering and she started crying.
Oh my God, that's so sweet. Well, if she doesn't
I
listen to
just
this,
outed
there
her
there
on this
will there will at least be
podcast.
one other Haber that listens to this, regardless. So, but you mentioned she did like bird calls and like bird like mating calls and stuff like that. What is an example? You don't have to do it unless you want to, but what's an example of a bird that you remember her doing?
Honestly, I don't remember what the bird was called. I don't remember what the mating call was. I just remember her doing it and me looking around and being like, what is going on?
Oh my God.
So couldn't tell you. But she also walks her pet llamas around Berkeley. So that also
Wow.
gives you an insight into what she's like.
Pet llamas around Burke. That sounds like a, I don't know, like a 60s rock album name or something. Like, I don't know. But wow, Sydney, thank you so much. This has been awesome. Just like really appreciate everything you're doing, and it's so cool and unlocking some like things for so many. Um, where's the best place if people want to learn more about Dioro or NexStride or just to like connect with you online? Where's the best place they can do that?
The best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn, just at my name. Um, and for the business, getnextstride.com is where all the information is about our company. Um,
Perfect.
I also am passionate about, making sure people with Parkinson's have the resources they need. So if people have any questions about Parkinson's in general, they can reach out to me.
Awesome, thank you. And unfortunately, I like started interrupting you as you were saying that like very heartwarming thing to wrap it up. So, uh, c'est la vie. Thank you so much, Sydney. Last thing, final thoughts. It could be a quote. It could be just kind of like a one line, words to live by, whatever you want. Send us home here.
Words to live by, no pressure.
Yeah, yeah. No It
Um,
just everyone will take them very seriously and literally. So no pressure. No, just kidding.
um,
It can be your second favorite card game. It could be whatever you want.
um, I mean, I think when I think about like, okay, what is the thing that I want people to take away from this is, um, that if there is a product out there that you can create that can have an impact on people. I mean, healthcare is not the easiest way to start a business. It's not the fastest way to make $1 million, become a millionaire if that's what you're after, but it is impactful. And there are ways to do it. And there's a lot of support out there to do it through accelerators like Startup Health, through the NIH funding, SBARs, SDTRs. So I would say that one, reach out if I can help, and two, try it out.
Bring on the bongos.